Hello, and welcome to the 14th webinar in our 2017 SAP SuccessFactors HR Live Demo Series. Today's session is on workforce planning. My name is Jessie Labenwolf, and I'm going to cover some brief housekeeping. We'll be addressing your questions at the end of the demonstration, but you're encouraged to submit questions as you think of them using the Q&A panel on the left side of your console. If you experience any technical issues, please let me know via that same Q&A panel, and I'll help you out shortly. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the replay of this webinar in the next week or two. Keep an eye out for it in your email. Finally, I'd like to highlight the resource list, which should be on the right side of your console. This has a few assets for you to download, as well as a link for you to register for the full webinar series. You can access this list by pressing on the green icon at the bottom of your console. And with that, we are ready to dive in. Today's webinar will be led by Jan Wise and Ty Nguyen. Jan is a Director of Solutions Marketing, and Ty is a Senior Solutions Consultant here at SAP SuccessFactors. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jessie, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today. We're here to discuss our newly released headcount planning functionality within the SAP SuccessFactors Workforce Planning solution. And here is our agenda for today. We'll start with a brief introduction on workforce planning, then focus in on headcount planning, followed by a demo of our solution. And we will have some time at the end for any questions you may have. So with that, let's begin. Oftentimes, if you ask 5 different people their definition of workforce planning, you could get just as many different answers. So I thought we'd start by giving a high-level definition of how we define workforce planning to help provide some context for this webinar. And it can be applied to both our existing strategic workforce planning functionality as well as our new operational headcount planning functionality. So we define workforce planning as a process by which organizations ensure they have the right people at the right place and time and at the right cost to help execute and achieve their business goals. So why do workforce planning? What are the benefits? Well, studies show that organizations who plan better perform better. There's 32% lower employee turnover in organizations that have enterprise-wide visibility into their workforce, 10% higher employee engagement in organizations that align their HR strategy with their business strategy, and 18% more trained employees in organizations with visibility into workforce availability and gaps. So if research is telling us how important workforce planning is, why are only 22% of organizations doing it? Well, it's because it's difficult, it's challenging. There are a variety of reasons why this is the case, but here are a few common ones. First, oftentimes we expect HR to own workforce planning, but division managers are responsible for the success or failure of their strategic plans, and the human capital requirements of the strategy are no less a part of their responsibility than financial, technical, or operational tasks. Now, HR does play a critical role, but it's more one of stewardship. Second, sometimes we fail to see the bigger picture, and we view workforce planning as a short-term budgeting activity versus a strategic exercise. So we focus on slotting employees into project teams or into schedules versus ensuring talent managers prepare a future workforce. And third, some organizations try to run before they walk, attempting workforce planning for an entire organization in their first iteration will almost certainly be overwhelming and limit the program's success. And next, oftentimes, HR isn't able to communicate in the language of their stakeholders. So answering questions about the plan's return on investment, the cost of vacancies in critical roles, savings expected from lower turnover, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, like with so many processes, not just workforce planning, but organizations fail at the last hurdle, which is implementation. There's no clear owner who's held accountable for implementing the plan. Someone who will manage the outline of specific tactics, timeframes, budget, check-in dates, and most importantly, a set of metrics for monitoring the progress. So at SAP SuccessFactors, we have a few solutions that are complementary to each other to help avoid these pitfalls and provide the right solution for your workforce planning needs, whatever they may be. On the left side, we have solutions like SAP Workforce Forecasting and Scheduling, SAP Multi-Resource Scheduling, SAP Cloud Resource Scheduling to help with shift or project management. These are more short-term scheduling solutions, for example, for your contingent workforces or seasonal employees. On the right side, we have strategic workforce planning, which is more for long-term workforce planning needs. We've been offering this functionality for the last handful of years, and it helps close the gap between supply and demand for critical job roles over the next 2 to 3 years or even longer. And then in the middle, we have headcount planning, which will be the focus of our discussion today. It's designed to close the gap between operational scheduling and strategic workforce planning for a comprehensive workforce planning solution. So let's talk about headcount planning. Let's start with a common scenario depicted here where the manager says, we need more people, and you have an executive that says, well, everyone says that. And then after a bit of negotiating, both parties agree to increase headcount by a certain number of employees, let's say 100. So everyone agrees that we're increasing headcount by 100 people. That's a good starting point. But what about the details of the job roles? These are all locked in the manager's head. So what the roles are, where the headcount will be located, when we need them, etc. This makes it difficult to execute and monitor how we're tracking against the plan. For example, recruiters need to better plan their recruiting activities, so they need to know which jobs to recruit for. And financial controllers need to make sure the budgets and forecasts are correct. And the workforce planner needs to make sure short-term plans align with long-term plans. So here we can see how workforce planning is a multidisciplinary process which touches many different people in the organization, all of whom need to have access to the appropriate information to succeed. So what happens now, right? Oftentimes we ask the manager, oops, went one too far ahead. There we go. Oftentimes we'll ask the manager to fill out a spreadsheet with all the information we need. This is a one-off manual process that's time-consuming and can be prone to human error and oftentimes difficult to maintain. And that's just one of the many challenges of headcount planning. And here we have a list of some additional common challenges that we often hear about. You know, we have headcount planning and budgeting is manual, cumbersome, and that it takes too long and can be error prone. There's poor alignment across financial budget, headcount plans, and organizational objectives, disparate spreadsheets sourced from various systems. The accuracy of budgets and forecasts are sometimes called into question. There's a lack of visibility into workforce composition and cost. And finally, it's difficult to consolidate planning and budgeting across the organization. So with SAP SuccessFactors workforce planning, we aim to remedy these issues with the help of our new headcount planning functionality. Here you can see some of our design principles that drove much of our development, and I'm not going to go through all of them listed here, but they basically fall into three categories. The first is, you know, helping HR design and execute better on your people strategy and giving you insight into what kind of workforce you need to be successful. The second is improving processes. So HR shouldn't have to react to finance, but rather we should engage with finance in a conversation about what kind of workforce is needed to be successful in the next 12, 15, 18 months. And third, making data a competitive asset. So bringing data into one place for better visibility into how you can optimize and allocate your resources. And so with that, I've come to the end of the overview session, and I will hand it off to Ty so you can see our solution in action. Ty?
Great, thanks so much, Jan. Just bear with me, folks, for 1 minute while I commence the screen sharing, and then we'll jump right into the live demonstration. So you all should be seeing my screen now. That's just going to take a quick second for that to load, perhaps on your end. And to set the stage today, what we're going to do is look at this solution today through the eyes of Laurent, who is the individual that you see on the screen here. He is the president of our EMEA region for this organization. So as I explore himself and himself inside the hierarchy, we can see that he's actually has 4 direct managers. And if you look at the totals, actually 220 direct reports. So responsible for quite a large part of the organization. So the org chart here is a great way for me to stay in touch with my team. It provides all my employee and talent data in one spot. And also provides for me the position org chart. And this allows me to see occupied or vacant positions currently within our organization. Now, this is particularly useful when it comes to headcount planning, as it provides insight of the current org structure in advance of my headcount planning exercise. And you can see I can navigate the same way as the standard org chart, being able to drill down and drill up into our organizational hierarchy. So let's fast forward, and it's now headcount planning time. And as the person ultimately responsible for the headcount budget in this department or division or cost center, I've received notification on the homepage that a new plan is ready. So for folks who haven't seen the homepage before, I love this view. This is like my own personal productivity center. So I can access all my key tasks, my team, but also be proactively notified of things that require my attention. So if I look at my headcount plan, I can see that for my 2017 plan for EMEA, which is currently due, I can click on that, and that will open up the screen that shows me my current headcount, but also planned headcount for each planning period. In our case here, I've been planning based on quarterly assumptions with my team, but you can easily create plans by month, half year, year, etc. The current positions are clearly displayed in blue, and you can see the blue bars there quarter over quarter, and the headcount budget guidance overlaid in as a black guide bar. I can see that I'm currently under quota for headcount for each quarter, with some slight headcount growth moving toward the end of the year. And the total indicates that I have approval to grow the department to 230 heads by the end of the year, as indicated by the guideline there. So let's open up the plan and take a closer look at some of the details that make up this headcount plan. As I drill down into my 2017 plan, I can now see analytics of my current and planned headcount looks by detailed segments. So for example, the headcount is split amongst job roles and locations. As I scroll down, the table below lets me drill to detail to see exactly how many people are sitting within the structures that roll up to the parent structure. So for example, subdepartments or cost centers. So for this executive area, as I navigate that screen, you'll notice how it drops down into further detail and segments it across Germany, the UK, France, and also Russia. Let's click into a cell to look at the current filled and vacant positions. So as I drill down here, you'll notice that I can see, in this case, the planned positions. But if I switch the filters at the top, you'll notice I can also see filled or vacant positions as well. And this is coming from the Employee Central Position Org Chart that we saw earlier. Now, I could plan to fill a vacant position within a certain period by indicating the target months, or reduce an existing position if we need to shrink. I can even add a new position into the plan for approval by creating the Create New Plan button, and that's located at the bottom of the screen. We'll come back to this shortly in more detail. Now, at this stage, we can see that there are a lot of positions to plan for on my own, but with headcount planning, I have the ability to delegate part of this headcount budget to one of the department leads in my team. And this allows me to include my teammates in the discussion and have them provide direct input on the organizations that they're responsible for. Now, in turn, my productivity is improved by collaborating with someone closer to that part of the organization while simultaneously fostering collaboration across a large company. Let's go back to my plan. And we'll come back to this later on. I want to show how we can involve and delegate subplans to other individuals. So again, taking a look at the current structure, I can see that I can add headcount to numerous locations. As I hover over the charts, I can see that I've been approved to grow the department up to 235 heads, which is a growth of 13 heads by the end of the year. So at this point, let's say I do want to delegate some of this planning to our other department heads by creating subplans. As I scroll down, I can see the subplans assigned to my managers by location for Germany, the UK, and Russia. And you notice how the subplan administrators are also displayed there. I can change the subplan owner if I wanted to. I could also change the cost center while I was at it. And I can even change the guidance within these subplans as well, if that needs to course correct. And this is something that I can do, or the subplan owner, of course, can do on their own. Now, during our co-innovation sessions, we discovered that the current headcount planning tools that customers are using, whether that's homegrown systems or spreadsheets, is rarely where the actual planning takes place. And it often happens in email conversations or on paper, or even on a homemade spreadsheet. And the reason is that the initial receiver of a plan is typically a high-level manager or an HR business partner, and they don't immediately update the planning tool. So instead, they ask their next-level managers what they plan to change next year, and they collect that input via email or a conversation. And at the end of that process, they type the result into the official tool or spreadsheet. So we wanted the tool to support this process and assist with timely information during those conversations. So therefore, we allow managers to break down their plan into subplans and assign those plans to managers further on down the hierarchy. And this way, the tool follows that conversation along, and all the data, of course, stays in the one tool that all users use for planning. So now that I've seen my subplans, and have seen how I can delegate some of that responsibility, I'm going to go back to my plan to decide where I'm going to put these new positions. Let's look at the total headcount plan, and what I'm going to do at this point is create a new plan item. In this case, I'm going to add a new position by clicking Addition, and from here, I fill in all the jobs details. And let's just pick some here for our best run organization. Now, it's important to note that at this stage, I'm not actually creating an actual position. I'm simply creating a draft request to have a position approved based on this data. I also want to select the time interval here, which is when I plan to hire for this role. And as our headcount budget only starts increasing from September, I don't want to request for a new headcount before this time, so I'm going to pick Q3. As we create this, you'll notice that now it automatically appears into our planned positions. At this point, I can choose to copy and duplicate this position. If I wanted to increase the headcount based on that, or create, of course, a new addition or reduction. At this point, I think I'm happy with the results of this. I've added a new headcount addition to the plan, and I'm ready to submit this plan. At this stage, I might not necessarily have the authority or the approval to hire or reduce based on my plan. I need to actually wait for approval to come through before I can start creating positions and raising requisitions. So I wanted to just quickly show you what that will look like from an approver point of view. So I've logged in as the approver, and what I want to do is open up the master plan. I'm going to the same view that Laurent was looking at earlier, but you'll notice that as the approver, I can approve or reject each addition or reduction proposed by my planners. So in this case here, I'm happy with the details here. I'm going to approve them all. Click Yes. And now that that's done, Laurent can continue on with the headcount planning exercise. So I just wanted to quickly show you how the approver, as you delegate them, can either reject or approve those headcount position requests as they come in. Switching back to Laurent, let's log back in to see that approval and start creating the positions and ultimately the requisitions to hire for. So all of my suggestions hopefully have been approved. Let's come in and take a look. Excellent. So I can now create a position for this new headcount by simply clicking the Create Position button. The new position pre-populates by inheriting the attributes approved in the plan. And in this case, we have an additional workflow activated to confirm the details about the new position and ensure it's properly endorsed and set up correctly as well. Once this new position has been created and properly endorsed, the recruiting manager or hiring manager can see this in their position org chart and raise a requisition to start the recruitment process. So in summary, we started as the headcount planner, Laurent, moving into viewers plans and looking at some of the growth targets that they've set. He was able to view the current position org chart, create a new position that was then passed to the approver for rejection or approval. Once that was approved, Laurent could now come in and finish his headcount planning exercise by creating a position from that recommendation which is ultimately passed to the recruiting team to create the job requisition to hire force in recruiting. That was a summary of our headcount planning capability. I wanted to pass the floor now back to Jan and the team for a question.
Thanks so much, Ty. We definitely have quite a few questions in our queue here. Jan, do you wish to speak to the slide right here in front of us?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to give a quick summary of, what this actually means, right, for our customers. And so basically, with our workforce planning solution and our new headcount planning functionality, this will help simplify budget setup and circulation, which will help improve stakeholder satisfaction, eliminate any unnecessary cycles, and help to minimize duplications and errors. It'll also help to manage risk and prevent errors in budgeting. So, it'll help enable or enforce standards and consistencies across your planning processes, and help estimate the impact of internal position changes on your financial budget. And then finally, it will accurately match your staffing to your business objectives. So you'll be able to align your hiring with strategic direction of your organization, manage hiring according to required skills, and lastly, quantify and demonstrate the business value of your new headcount. So with that, we have come to the end of our presentation. We'd like to thank you for your time. We hope you found this session helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them through the chat. I know that a number have come in. So Jesse, should I hand it over to you now for Q&A?
Yes, please. Yes, please. And while we answer the first couple questions, I'm going to leave this poll on your screen. If you're interested in scheduling a complimentary one-on-one demo about the workforce planning solution, please go ahead and select the Yes Radio button. I'll leave this up for a couple of minutes while we do our first few questions, and then I'll move on to another slide showing the rest of our series schedule. But definitely want to offer this to you. It's a great opportunity to get a more one-on-one sort of experience for the demo. But let's jump into our queue. We've got several questions. Let's start with, are there any prerequisites for deploying headcount planning in SuccessFactors?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. And I'd also like to invite my colleague Kuros Bazad. He is a director of solutions marketing as well, and has a lot of insight around workforce planning. So I'd like to invite him to the conversation as we do our Q&A. But for this first question, are there any prerequisites? Yes. So in addition to your workforce planning license, we do require EC with Employee Central with position management. Currently, that is necessary in order to leverage our headcount planning functionality. We are working on removing this as a prerequisite in the future. However, in its current state, EC with position management is a prerequisite for headcount planning.
And to add to that, I think it's this is Kuros Bazad. As we work on further enhancements to the product, we will be able to support other core HR systems of record. So if you have SAP, ECC HR, that is your core system of record. We'll be able to from that and allow you to do headcount planning in this tool, and likewise for any other third-party HRS systems. But that's part of the plan and future releases.
What happens to new positions that have been approved during headcount planning?
So with that, when in the solution, as Ty was showing, when a position currently gets approved, the cost center manager, the manager that's working through that, has the option at that point to click the button to create the position back in Employee Central. So this is the direct tie back to Employee Central. That's where everything got preloaded. If this is where you're going to create back. And it follows the workflow that was established in Employee Central for creating new positions. So it's not bypassing anything from that perspective. So, if they have to go through any approvals, it will go through that process, all the required fields, everything that's required to get a new position created, addressed as part of that.
All right. Can this be displayed by dollar amount, the head cost?
So today, right now, the focus is on the headcount and FTE. As part of the planned enhancements to the product, we have an integration with SAP Real Spend, which ties back to SAP S/4HANA Finance. And what we do is we will provide for all the positions, current positions, we will provide the costs associated with those and the forecast on how those costs can be, are forecasted to, increase or decrease into the future. The cost components, you will define what you want included in that, if it's just, if it's salary, bonus, all the benefits, real estate, anything else that's captured in finance, you define what gets included or what, is excluded from the cost component that you use that. So when you add a new position, it pulls in all that information and gives you a forecast of how your cost for your organization is going to increase forward, and again how that kind of aligns with the budget. If you're over budget, then you can go back and tweak, you can change the positions, remove positions to be able to meet the cost guidelines. Or if it is absolutely necessary, then kind of kicking off the right workflow to have the adjustments to the budgets ultimately put in place for that. So again, costs are not part of the initial release of the product, but it is part of the planned enhancements that will be coming up. So look for that.
When you approve, does that also approve the requisition in recruiting module?
No, it doesn't. So when you approve a position, it just means that you're essentially allowed to go and create that position, have that position created in Employee Central. As part of enhancements, we will also be providing visibility into kind of a timeline view, and this is, I believe, available with our Q2 release, the timeline view of, what's the status of that position. Is it filled? Is it not filled? Or when it's going to get filled over the next 12 months or whatever the horizon it is that you've defined for the workforce plan. Is as part of feature enhancements, at that point, this can become more of a continuous, headcount planning management process that becomes your hub to go to as a manager to see where you are with respect to your workforce. If the budget has been released, then it will allow you to actually go and create the position from the same place, or tie back to field glass for contingent workforce management, so you can essentially create a requisition for a contract worker. So you have insight into does it make sense to hire an employee, or the time to fill is too long and you need to bring in somebody sooner, so you will leverage a contractor for that. So these are all part of the plan enhancements for the solution that gives you the full visibility into what your organization will look like and how you're going to get those people on board to do the job.
And does this interface with SAP Workforce Management?
If you can elaborate on the question. No, it directly does not tie back into SAP Workforce Management, but I would like to hear a little bit more on what you mean by that.
How are the planning numbers of what to plan for put into the system? In the example, the increase to 235.
So the increase, these are based on the numbers that are coming up from the financial budgets. Right. No, again, it's when you're looking at an HR looks at, the more of the bodies, the headcount, the full-time equivalents that you need to put in place. Finance does not necessarily care about the individual numbers, and he cares about the cost. So this is where you were doing the translation from the cost aspect to the the actual headcount, the approved headcount that's associated with that, and that translation allows you to kind of define what the guidelines are in terms of increases for your cost center.
Well, excellent. That concludes the questions that we have in our queue. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. A big thanks to all of our speakers, Jan Wise, Tai Nguyen, and Kouros Bazad. And to you, our audience, we thank you for your time and participation. Would you still like to sign up for a complimentary one-on-one demo with SAP? Because in a few moments, a voluntary survey will pop up asking for your feedback on today's session, and it includes a way to schedule a one-on-one demo. It's a great way to reach out, ask for more personalized information, as well as to help shape our future webinars. Just a reminder that today's webinar has been recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the replay in the coming weeks. We hope that you'll join us for our next demo in another week, which will be on performance and goals. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great day.